but we sort of quickly made the decision really that we were going to sort of review and amend our the way we communicated with our residents, and really look at sort of focusing on that collection with care, reducing our reliance on enforcement action, and really try and promote that communication with our residents and look at supporting them through what was a really difficult time. So yeah, it was a really challenging period, but we sort of managed to really improve our relationships and make a positive change as far as our income collection was concerned.
Just wrapped up a really interesting conversation with Gareth Sinnett, the income team leader at Bournville Village Trust. Today we discussed some key topics from the impact of the pandemic, how this has shaped income collection to move to a more collect with care mentality, and how he supported his team throughout this with the use of grants and funding and changing processes. And also we looked at some of the key challenges facing income professionals in the future and the future of income collection. Really relevant to a lot of income professionals out there. And without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome to the Social Housing Podcast. My name is Stephen Lawrence. I'm joined today by Gareth Sinnett, income team leader at Bournville Village Trust. Welcome, Gareth. Would you mind to start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your role at Bournville?
Yeah, so Gareth Sinnett, so I'm the income management team leader at Bournville Village Trust. We're a social housing provider in Bournville, which is in South Birmingham. We manage just under 4,000 properties as the trust. So thanks for having me today.
Fantastic. Delighted to have you. We've got a few topics to talk through today. So we're going to be talking about how the pandemic impacted yourself and the team, sort of talk about, the transition and changes you had to make and adapt, and then talk about some different options available to support you with that, and sort of the challenges coming up in the sector as well. So just to take things back, sort of wind the clock back to when the pandemic started, how did that affect your team? The very sort of early days when people were remote working, courts were closed, all sorts of things were taking place.
Yeah, so it was obviously a really challenging time. A lot of things changed quite quickly, and certainly with income, it was really difficult. We had the court process was effectively stopped. Residents' income was challenged across the board, so they obviously found it very difficult to maintain rent payments, and we saw rent arrears increase as a result, and that was across the sector really. So it was a sort of double whammy. We couldn't escalate cases, and we were struggling to sort of liaise with residents as well and really support them through the process. So it was a really challenging time, and you throw in the mix that obviously all the team were working from home, so you didn't have the same sort of links as you would have done normally. So yeah, it was a really challenging time really, but we sort of quickly made the decision really that we were going to sort of review and amend our the way we communicated with our residents, and really look at sort of focusing on that collection with care, reducing our reliance on enforcement action, and really try and promote that communication with our residents and look at supporting them through what was a really difficult time. So yeah, it was a really challenging period, but we sort of managed to really improve our relationships and make a positive change as far as our income collection was concerned.
Fantastic. I know a lot of income teams did struggle at the start of the pandemic without that escalation. They were seemingly, calling constantly, knowing there was no sort of next step to take things to. How did you sort of support your team with the change, the process change from working from home to moving away from enforcement and this collect with care that a lot of the sector has sort of been seeming to move towards?
Yeah, so it was sort of obviously keeping in regular contact with the team and supporting them. There was a lot of personal issues they may have been going through. Obviously, working from home, making sure they were able to provide the services that they wanted to. But as far as our sort of processes, we we quickly sort of amended our income procedure to really focus less on the enforcement action. So looking at notice followed by court application, followed by eviction application, and really focus more on communication and sort of make that pledge with the residents that if you engage with us, then we will pledge to not escalate. Um, so we really promoted sort of informal communications, things like WhatsApp have been a real success, keeping that communication ticking over, regular contact with residents, regularly checking in with them, and less reliant on the arrears letters. And we softened the language that we used in our arrears letters as well to have a more friendly approach, less reliant on that sort of enforcement side of it, which can seem quite scary. I mean, the reality was, majority of the residents were unable to pay through circumstances that wasn't their fault. It was forced upon them. So it's our duty, really, as a social housing provider, to make sure we can support them through that process. And sending a enforcement letter is not really going to benefit us, and it's certainly not going to benefit the residents. So yeah, it was certainly really focusing on that communication and engagement with the residents.
How did the residents respond? So when you moved from this change to, escalation and trying to build these relationships, what was the experience like for the tenants? Did they react positively? Was it an immediate impact?
Absolutely, yeah. It's been a real positive experience. I think the team have certainly benefited from it, and the residents have. We've developed a much better relationship, close working relationship with our residents. Um, Half the battle with income, quite frankly, is that building that communication and trust. If you can get a resident to think, I'm struggling this month, I'm going to ring my landlord, then that's half the battle. We can then put the support processes in place to help support them. And it's not always easy, there's not always a quick fix, but at least if you've got that relationship, you can access funding or support that's available, make sure they're receiving the support. We did the team did a lot of work. We sort of increased our relationship with Birmingham City Council and access some of their support funds, like discretionary housing payments was a big help, and certainly the homeless prevention fund was a real success. We made multiple applications and were able to address some of our larger arrears. We had sort of three or four cases that had over £5,000 worth of arrears, which we managed to clear in full purely from homeless prevention fund applications. And that's a huge change to someone's life. If you've got that debt hanging over you, potential for court and eviction processes, so to have that extra tool and ability to make that application, clear the debt, it gives the residents a real clean slate to be able to start again. And again, that sort of increases their relationship and trust with us, where they can come to us with an issue, and we've got genuine tools that we can put in place to help and support them through the process. We had one of the team was working with a resident. She had over £5,500 worth of arrears and young children at the property, a lot of debt, which was causing mental health issues, quite frankly. And through an application to homeless prevention, we were able to clear her debt in full, um, you know, clear the court order, and get her to really start again. And you could see in her physical appearance really the change for positive that something like that was able to make on her life. And obviously that has a knock-on impact to our team as well, where we can offer genuine support rather than, I suppose, paying lip service to support, having genuine tools in place where we can, effectively clear someone's debt or reduce someone's debt substantially. So it's through what was a dark time, we've been able to find those real positive impacts for residents.
Yeah, that's fantastic too. Accessing these funds, making a huge impact on someone's life, and also the income officers doing what they enjoy best: conversation, supporting, and helping people. For any income managers that might be listening now, what sort of advice would you give them on locating and applying for these sorts of funds that are out there?
Well, we developed our own tenant support budget as well. So we put money aside where we could help support residents with things like white goods, furniture, just to help them throughout their tenancy. If there's, we often find that tenants manage their finances hand to mouth, which they can get through day to day. But if there's an issue such as the washing machine breaks or is the car breaks down, something like that, then that is an added expense which they're unable to budget for. So we've got these tenant support budgets available which we can help with that. And we also launched a well winter campaign last winter where we look to support residents further with things like food vouchers, fuel vouchers for people on prepayment meters, and even things like school uniforms or winter coats for the children. And that again gave an extra tool or a string to the bow for the income officers to be able to genuinely offer immediate support to the residents. So if a resident would ring up and say, "I'm really struggling to pay the rent this month," we could almost sort of help them with the food bill, fuel bills, to allow that extra income, so they were able to manage their debts and manage their rent account better. And again, that added impact, it gave the residents the knowledge that if I ring BVT and speak to the income team, they're genuinely able to offer me some help. So next time I have this problem, I'll call BVT sooner and request that support. But certainly some of the wider support available, we do really make an effort to keep in contact with some of the best practice groups that income will have. That shared knowledge is key to success in the sector, I believe. And LinkedIn's a really good resource to get on and link up with other housing associations. Look at shared best practice. It's been a real positive for us because there's so many sort of support funds and various different things available. It can be quite difficult to keep a track of. So if you can link in with some of those best practice groups, it's a real good way of keeping your finger on the pulse in the sector.
Fantastic. I'm sure we can share a couple of links and groups in the description section as well. And collect with care has been, well, always has been an element of collect with care. It's just really been enforced with lockdown and the courts closing. But where do you think the future, or how can we develop it further to really sort of support tenants? Is there anything the sector or income managers can do to really push this?
Well, I suppose from our point of view, we through which I'm sure would be typical for the sector, we saw an increase of rent arrears certainly through that first year of lockdown. We managed to then have really good last sort of 12 months and be able to bring arrears down to pre-pandemic levels. And we've been able to do that through very little enforcement action. There's always a small minority, but broadly that's been through the collection with care approach we've taken. So really, the decision for me is quite straightforward. If we've been able to maintain performance and develop the relationships with our residents and the communication and that trust, then I don't see why we should go back to that enforcement angle. Now the courts are back open once again, and I'm certainly promoting with the team that they, look at that communication, build that trust, get that relationship going over just escalating through the arrears process. And I think, that's that will be our approach going forward. Certainly, if we can maintain performance, anyway.
Absolutely. And these sort of collecting with care conversations, I imagine, are a bit more time consuming than standard conversations. How have you adapted and supported the team with processes to free up the time to really have these in depth conversations with them?
Well, we obviously there's lots of different support available, and like you said, those conversations can take longer. You're often going into someone's finances, their incomings and outgoings, so they are longer conversations, but they're that's time well spent. If you fall back to that enforcement side where you are looking at multiple court applications, the way the court process is, there's multiple delays presently, and historically there always were anyway. So I don't see it as though we're using any more time really. You're just putting that groundwork in place to hopefully stop having to take that enforcement action in the future. So it's, I don't see it either or. I think if you put that front end work in at the start, I think it benefits you in the long term anyway. And something we've really focused on is promoting our financial inclusion team, especially looking at pre-tenancy work as well. So really focusing on application through sign up, making sure residents are aware of their obligations as far as the rent's concerned. They understand how to manage their benefit claims, whether it be UC or housing benefit. And again, that we're asking the right questions at the right point so we can get the appropriate support in place. We can access the tenant support fund, as I said, to help someone buy a bed or something like that, so they can really focus on making sure their rent is up to date from day one. But we're giving them the appropriate support to make sure their tenancy is successful and sustainable.
Fantastic. And how do you feel these sort of funds have helped with that relationship? So supporting people up front, because I know a lot of the time when people fall into arrears, it's quite hard to get back to, just a neutral ground. So that support up front, how have you found, do you have any sort of success stories with tenants, or have you noticed any improvements with supporting people up front and being able to build that relationship, and how that sort of supported your tenant landlord relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, certainly with the financial inclusion team, getting that, involved at sign up, they're able to build a relationship from day one with the residents. And I think we're often, or historically, as a sector, we're not necessarily brilliant at advising residents about the knowledge and skills and support that's available. It tends to be almost a crisis management reactive service, whereas we've tried to really focus more on the proactive service and advertising what support we do have available at sign up, so that if residents do struggle, they know, well, I can speak to BVT and they can help me with XYZ, whether that's, like I said, support for food or fuel payments, or furniture, or just general debt and benefit advice. They know that they can speak to us. And again, if we can sort of get that communication from day one, get them to think, well, I'll speak to them at an early point pre-crisis, it's much easier to resolve and takes a lot less resource, time and energy if you can get involved at that early stage. So really sort of, keep hammering the drum about communication and advertising, really shouting what support we've got available so residents clearly understand.
Fantastic. And I know that a lot of income teams are sort of at capacity. So how did you approach that initial project to go and be proactive and reach out to a lot of people to offer the support up front? We know it'll have that benefit long term, but how did you find the time and organize your processes and strategy to go about this proactive approach?
Yes, so we use a lot of the financial inclusion team to get that proactive work in place, to get that involvement from day one, and they will case manage for quite a while, especially during the start of a tenancy. So they'll offer that pre-tenancy support, but then carry that through until they're satisfied the resident is, stable and able to maintain. We've sort of looked at the way we communicate with residents, and recently have been sending out emails from the financial inclusion team to all of our universal credit claimants, looking at advising them of the £20 UC uplift ending, for example, making sure they've got the information, they're aware of what's happening, and they know how to combat that and address it, and aware again of the support that we have available. And we'll use the financial inclusion team to really drive that proactive work, and then refer back into the income team if there are, rent arrears that need addressing and things like that. But really sort of, yeah, flying the flag for financial inclusion and getting them to really drive that proactive work forward.
And you mentioned there the sort of end of the universal credit uplift. There's a lot of huge challenges coming up that the sector's about to face. You've got, the end of the UC uplift. You've got things like national insurance going up, the energy crisis, council tax is increasing. There's things like breathing space on the horizon that's starting to pick up a little bit. What would you say is the biggest challenge that the sector's about to face?
Well, certainly, I think at the moment it would be the energy crisis. We've got, the UC uplift is sort of £20 a week, but that just affects universal credit claimants. The energy crisis effectively, impacts on all of our residents, and some of the price hikes presently are astronomical and going to be a real challenge once you do factor in that £20 uplift has gone, cost of living going up across the board. But certainly, quite frankly, I had a look at changing my tariff this week, and it went up over £100 a month. I mean, that's crazy. And if you're on a low income, to be able to find that extra money whilst you're potentially had money removed from you via universal credit is going to be a real challenge for our residents. Um,
I mean, I haven't even dared try to look at mine yet. I'm just kind of burying my head in the sand a little bit on that. And I think what can landlords do to prepare for something like this? We know the energy crisis is starting to take off, and the universal credit cuts, kind of impacts that. And they're both coming at the same time. Furlough end. What can we do to prepare for things like the energy crisis? Is there anything we can do, or what? How are you at Bournville Village Trust preparing?
we had our winter campaign last year. We're going to relaunch it again for this Christmas, looking at really targeting food and fuel vouchers, so we can issue energy vouchers to residents if they are struggling, which will help in the short term. Some of our longer term plans, we've just sought funding from Energy Redress, and we've linked in with some local providers in South Birmingham, and we're in the process of advertising for an energy advisor, which is a new role at Bournville Village Trust. Someone who's going to come in, work with the housing team, and identify residents who are in fuel poverty or at risk of fuel poverty. Looking at practical solutions, so we can visit residents, look at how they're using their heating controls, checking what tariff they're on, making sure they're if they're having any debt problems with their provider, we can look at addressing those and looking at low cost solutions as well, things like energy light bulbs and things along those lines. So it's quite a timely appointment, to be quite frank, because we were going down this road before the energy crisis hit, but I think it's going to be really positive for us as a housing team to be able to offer that direct support to residents. And the way the energy crisis is at the moment, I think residents are really going to struggle with fuel poverty over this winter. So getting someone in place, hopefully we can help mitigate any of those issues that the residents have.
And you mentioned the energy redress scheme there. It's one that I hadn't heard about until very recently. In fact, conversations with yourself, Gareth. Would you mind just giving a little bit of information about that, how people might find it, how you found the scheme, and a little bit about their sort of background as well?
Yeah, sure. So the Energy Saving Trust were appointed to distribute payments for energy companies who may have breached rules. An energy redress is a pot of money available to charitable providers to apply to and look at addressing fuel poverty or energy poverty in their area. It's something we sort of came across. We were working with a local provider in accessing fuel vouchers, and then we came across this bid, and the opportunity came up for us to make an application for an energy advisor role, and we made the bid and we were successful. There is a lot of funding, several £1 million available in this fund, and it's available nationally. So any charitable organisation can apply as long as they're using the funds to address energy poverty or energy issues in their area. So it's something where we've been, we're really positive and looking forward to how how it will affect and give a positive support to our residents. But I would certainly, if that sounds like something that interests you, I would certainly advise you to have a look at the Energy Redress website and investigate whether a bid could be made really, because certainly over the next 6 months it's going to be a real challenge for residents in our sector.
Fantastic. I'm sure we can put a link in the description and point people in that direction as well. And so you mentioned through the energy redress scheme, you've had the Well Winter Fund and vouchers for fuel and food, and now the energy advisor position. What sort of benefits did you see first time round with the winter fuel vouchers and how they were received by tenants and the experience they had with the officers providing them?
It was, I think, it was quite a different way of working for the team, to be honest. To administer that sort of financial support and that funding. It's not something we've really done before, but it was such a positive experience. Just the way we were able to have those conversations with residents and offer them a genuine solution rather than we'll refer you on to XYZ or if sort of amending payment plans, things like that, which are all positive and right to do, but we were actually able to say, well, look, we can give you a £50 fuel voucher or a £50 Aldi voucher. It's quite a different way of working, and again, it really benefited our relationship with the residents. The residents, we've had. I've worked in income for the best part of 11 years, and I've never seen so many positive feedback comments that we've had in the last 18 months from residents. Really lovely email messages that they send complimenting the team, the way they've worked, and how we've genuinely been able to support them. And it's been a real positive impact. And although we have a tough winter ahead of us, to be quite frank, and beyond, but because we've managed to build that relationship, I feel that we're in as good a place as we could hope to be in order to tackle those challenges. As I said before, the half the battle is that communication with the residents, and I feel we've done as good a job as we could have done under the circumstances with that relationship. So we're in as a good a place as we'd like to be going forward.
Absolutely, and that's brilliant to hear as well. Building those relationships and the positive feedback that you're getting as well. I imagine that must have quite an impact on the officers. The day-to-day role, just sort of, especially coming up to a very difficult time, having that positive reinforcement from the tenants and knowing they're doing the right thing and supporting them would be brilliant as well. With the energy advisor role, it's not one that I've really heard of before. What was the plan? What are the sort of benefits that you're looking for? If there's anyone out there who might be, have heard that title and be thinking about implementing it, what was your key reasons for choosing an energy advisor and what are the benefits for the tenants?
Well, we really wanted to focus on that fuel poverty. We're concerned about fuel poverty in our area. Our properties are very nice, but they are quite old. Some of our properties are, sort of nearly 100 years old. So we wanted to really make sure that we're able to support residents through energy poverty. The fuel energy bills are going up and up and up, and they're becoming an increasing percentage of residents' outgoings and their disposable income. So we really wanted to identify and support residents as best as possible. Really, we're going to be looking at certainly fuel tariffs and clearing energy debts and things like that, but just how our residents use their energy as well, making sure they understand their thermostatic controls, their radiators are working as they should. They understand how to heat their home appropriately. Even looking at their water bills and things, their water usage, how they can reduce that. A lot of residents are on a water meter now, so looking at how they can save water costs. So it's win-win for us, really. We've been able to receive this funding, but I think it's going to have a big impact on residents' ability to balance their incomings and outgoings, and I'm really looking forward to it because I think it's quite a new way of working, and yeah, it'll really benefit the team and the residents.
I think, we'd all be very interested to hear the impact that's had, a few months down the line, and how you get on with that position. It's been brilliant talking with you today, Gareth. I think just one sort of final question from me. We've spoken about, the sector reacting to the pandemic and how we had to change. Now that enforcement is back on the cards, what do you think the future of income collection looks like? Has Collect with Care proven itself, or do you think we'll go straight back to enforcement, or it'll be sort of a hybrid approach going forward?
I think ultimately, certainly from our point of view, we found this a real positive experience. There's been challenges. Arrears did increase to start with, and there were a challenge to get them back. But the team have found it a really positive experience, and our residents have. If we, my question would be really is if we can maintain performance through this collect with care approach, then why would we go back to enforcement action? It's always necessary in a certain amount of cases, but there's nowhere near the levels that we were looking at issuing notices before taking court action. And the team really value this new way of working, this better working relationship we have with our residents, being able to offer that genuine support, and the residents value it as well. They feel that they've got an officer there who's genuinely looking to support them through positive change, and just not looking to escalate or get money out of them. We're taking more of a holistic approach to their whole situation and not just focusing on the rent. So it's for me, it's a win-win really, and I certainly wouldn't want to go back to that just pure enforcement approach, when the benefits of this collection with care approach really has for the whole team and more importantly, our residents.
Fantastic, Gareth. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers.